movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle. From San Francisco to Long Island. 'Cause nothing's better than a motion video.
It's Movie Time is produced by John DeSando. Listen to shows and read reviews online at WCBE.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Wayne Hercule Miller.
and this is, I think, it's movie time.
It is. And we've got our masks, don't we?
Yep, we really do.
That were handed out at the press screening.
For our movie this week.
A Haunting in Venice.
Oh, okay. And this is another Agatha Christie.
Yes, and the third one by Kenneth Branagh, directing and starring as Hercule Poirot.
Yep, yep.
And John, you know what kind of surprised me, and of course, our listeners on the show can't see it, but you know the people watching the video, the thing that we're decked out in our like little white linen jackets,
Yep.
just because of what a fashionista Poirot is in the movies.
Well, we're also echoing, and nobody else would know it, we're also echoing Jake's jacket in the beginning of Chinatown.
Yes, that's true.
Which is
yes.
much
Yeah.
tighter
Yeah.
and much shinier, but it still evokes
Yeah.
the same kind of whiteness. And I always think
Yeah.
anything white like this jacket is bogey in Casablanca.
Definitely the evening, and of course, in several of the James Bond movies,
Yes,
all
yes.
these actors can rock
Yeah.
a white, not tuxedo, dinner jacket, a white dinner jacket.
Well, one of the reasons I like having you as a partner on this kind of show is that you're pretty much into the whole Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot
Right.
murder mysteries. I'm not as much, but I certainly am a devotee of Kenneth Branagh.
Yes.
And we will talk about him in our podcast a little bit later on. And
Yeah,
we'll
back
talk about
talk,
his
yeah.
career. And but for this one,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, let me ask you a meta question about this. I think this is a little bit different from the other two as I remember them. And I know you have good, perfect recall of the other two. Would you say it's true?
Yes, it is. And what's interesting, of course, his first one that he directed as stars Poirot was 2017's Murder on the Orient Express. But then, and John, it really kind of shocked me when I went back and kind of looked. It was just a year ago, it was 2022, that his other one, Death on the Nile.
Right.
And I think the one interesting thing about those, and they both really adhered to previous Poirot movies, like Albert Finney in 1974, Murders on the Orient Express, and Peter Ustinov on Death on the Nile, and both of which were also done by on the BBC series that aired on PBS here in the United States was David Sachet's Poirot, which to me was the kind of the definitive Poirot, almost
Okay.
kind of like Jeremy Brett's.
I wondered, but I thought you were. I thought Jeremy Brett was the one you really liked.
Oh yeah,
Was that
Holmes.
with Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, it was
that's
Sherlock
right.
Holmes, but it was David Sachet as Poirot,
Okay.
and a number of several feature-length ones that aired on PBS, but also more for the hour-long ones, which were very, very good. And of course, he could really rock a white dinner jacket, a linen dinner jacket too. But Branagh, the other two, and you're right. I said, both of those, I think people would remember from previous movies, but also there was a more star-studded cast
Yes.
in both of them.
Yes.
And of course, Murders on the Orient Express, which was kind of a claustrophobic one taking place on a snowbound passenger train. And then Death on the Nile, of course, had this a beautiful cinematography, but also the very beautiful Gal Gadot, as one of the people, and the equally handsome Armie Hammer,
Gosh, yeah.
in both of those
Yep.
movies too.
Yep.
So, but this one had more of two reasons why. One, it had more of a spiritual effect and spooky effect to it
Yeah.
too. But also a more of a laid-back Poirot. Did not have some of the usual tics and
Well, Branagh
annoying,
is
annoying
nothing-
habits.
Right,
You know?
Branagh is nothing if not a great actor.
Yes.
And he's playing the retired Poirot.
Yes, older and
Right.
post World War II, about I think 1947 it was
Yes,
set.
yes.
Whereas the other ones always took place in the 30s, you know.
And the other one seemed
World War II.
hyper to me. And
Yeah.
with, as you said, with so many stars and with so many possibilities. And with one of the virtues of those first two was that you could make a astute guess on any one of them to be the murderer.
Yes.
This one
yeah.
wasn't quite as easy to do that.
No, because, you know, and a little bit more of a confusing plot line, I believe, than the other two were. You know, the other two that you could kind of follow along, even though there were twists and turns and
Yeah.
surprises along the way. But this one was kind of like to try to follow along what the heck happened. And Michelle Yeoh's character, and I think she does a great job, but it's almost, not to give it away, but all I could say is kind of think of Janet Leigh and Hitchcock's Psycho,
Right.
as far as one of the major stars in the movie.
We want more of her.
Along.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And I also, at first I think, oh boy, am I going to be annoyed and irritated by Tina Fey? But she kind of grew on me.
Oh, I thought she was a
her.
great choice,
Yes.
right? I mean, she's not too glamorous,
Yep,
and she's holding back her usual shtick.
right,
So she's playing a writer.
right.
And
And a friend, and you know, it's funny because, and there was, you mentioned something at the end, because this was based on a Christie short story, I
Right,
believe, or novella
right.
called Halloween.
Yeah.
But with the Halloween with like an apostrophe between the two E's.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
Halloween. But I vaguely remember seeing that was one of the ones on PBS with David Sachet, you know, that but it was a more low-key thing built on a Halloween party.
Well, you know, we've traveled to Venice,
Yes.
and we were disappointed when our gondolier pulled out his cell phone.
Yes, and did not sing to us. Yeah, you know, there were the gang of us on the gondola, you know, and I was kind of expecting a little bit more, but I still really, really liked it. And I'd say if one thing that I would recommend, I was going to save this to the end, but I'll put it
Yeah.
in now, that I would recommend this for anybody who's been to Venice or has thought about going to Venice. I really, really like the scenery there in Venice and the canals and some of the monuments and various other things there that
Well,
I
yeah.
really, really like.
Branagh caught the decaying atmosphere of
Yes.
Venice.
Yes.
With his dark lenses and with very little happening on the canals.
Yes, yeah. And of course, and you see some scenes of look like either it was some soldiers in the background, maybe on leave. So you still do get kind of the sense that it is closely after World War II. But the other thing that I'm going to throw out there, since you had asked about what differences between
Yes.
this one
Yeah.
and the other two Poirots that Branagh did, I kind of liken, compared to all the other Poirots, and I'll get into more of those during back talk, but Branagh was a more action-filled type of character of Poirot in the first two. Not so much this time, but I remember the first two kind of reminded me of Robert Downey Jr. as Sherlock Holmes, and how he's a much more physical, a type of character than the Holmes that we came to expect. And I think Branagh did that in the first two
Well,
movies too.
consider the title, A Haunting in Venice.
Yes,
This means Branagh is picking off of some of the Gothic tradition,
yes.
and
yeah.
so, and he is doing a great job with that, but it is less of an exciting
Yeah.
Christie mystery.
Yeah, except for those who kind of, as I sat there in that one scene during kind of the seance during the Halloween party, I'm thinking, is this going to be kind of like The Conjuring, or Annabelle, all those spooky ghost-ridden things, and especially with And Branagh really has quite a flair in his direction, especially as the camera is whipping around, and of course, Michelle Yeoh's character kind of like spinning out of control.
Well, I also noticed, and I'd have to go back. I also noticed more close-ups than ever.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
I always wonder when a director makes that kind of a decision.
Yes,
what he's aiming for.
Yeah, and of course, I kept kind of looking at Tina Fey's little scar on her chin that I think I told you later, that she was asked about that and declines to talk about what caused this little scar on her chin.
Well, I think that Branagh brought in a good twist in the end. I think there are people who love these murder mysteries.
Yeah.
And they love to have a little bit of a twist.
Yeah.
I know guys like you can figure it out early, and once in a while I can a bit, or I'm saying I wonder if that person is the murderer.
Yeah, particularly what was going on, but as with a lot of those movies, and I always kind of liken the Poirot to the end with the Charlie Chan movies. When Chan gathers all the usual suspects, and then he lays out, and he talks about various clues that, where in the heck did he pull that out of?
All right,
Okay.
Wayne Miller.
Yep.
Now, we're getting to the end of It's Movie Time,
Yep.
and we're looking forward to Back Talk, our podcast. So right now I have to ask you, what do you recommend concerning A Haunting in Venice?
Well, I'm not going to mask my comments here, but I would recommend it. If anything else, you'll love seeing the scenes of Venice, but also for this, if you like the first two, I believe you'll like this one, and if you like mysteries in general, I really recommend it.
And you're watching a filmmaker, Kenneth Branagh, who is both a fine actor and a fine director, and you're watching him do so well with his craft, shading this differently from the other two. I have to give him credit. It's easy to fall into the formula, and he doesn't really. And he carries himself off, and Tina Fey and the other, even including the little kid, are pretty stand up.
The little bespectacled little kid who had eyeglasses that looked like yours, the little dark framed glasses.
It's movie time with John DeSando and his friends online. So everything is gonna be just fine. From the top down to the bottom. He's gonna let you know if you should stay home or if you should go. Might even yell if it's a spectacle. From San Francisco to Long Island. 'Cause nothing's better